Now, before starting our topic radiation pollution, let us first understand what radiation is. Radiation pollution comprises of two words, radiation plus pollution. So before starting this, we should know what radiations are, how these radiations can be harmful and can cause pollution to the environment. So what is radiation? Radiation is the emission and transmission of energy in the form of electromagnetic waves or subatomic particles. So what is radiation? Radiation is basically the emission and transmission of energy. It goes from one substance to another. It transmitted from one object to another in the form of visible and invisible waves, which are known as electromagnetic waves or subatomic particles. It can be ionizing, such as X-rays and gamma radiation, capable of releasing electrons from atoms, or non-ionizing like radio waves and visible light. So these electromagnetic waves are in the form of ionizing, such as X-rays and gamma radiations, which are capable of releasing electrons from atoms, or non-ionizing like radio waves and visible light. So the electronic waves, which is moving from one object to another, which causes radiations, are of two forms, we can say ionizing and non-ionizing. Ionizing consists of X-rays, gamma radiation, electrons from atoms, or non-ionizing means like radio waves and visible lights. So we can see that radiation is the emission of energy as electromagnetic waves, which include visible light like radio waves, microwaves, UV lights, X-rays, gammas, etc. Now moving forward, radiation is present in various forms, from natural sources like the sun to technological appliances like as medical radiation therapy. So the radiations which we have studied, the radiations which are electromagnetic waves, they are present in various forms. It can be of any kind, like uh, classify radiations into two types, like its sources can be of two types, like natural sources or technological sources. Natural sources which are not man-made sources, these are naturally appearing, like for example ultraviolet rays coming out from the sun. So it's a natural source. Man do not contribute anything in that. It's a natural form of radiations, like sources from the sun. We can say ultraviolet rays which are coming out of the sun is the form of radiation. And another source can be a technological appliances, such as medical radiation therapy. Technological appliances, for example, we can say mobile phones, televisions, computers. So these are technological appliances which causes the radiations. And human do not have any idea that how these radiations can be harmful to them. So one should control these radiations by adopting more of natural process objects instead of using technological applications. As we already know that natural sources like the ultraviolet rays coming from the sun are not in our control, but the technological applications which we are using, they can be controllable in nature. So one should opt for natural process objects, natural process material, instead of using technological applications object, such as mobile phones. The towers which we are using, from them also harmful rays are emitted, and which are very dangerous for all the living organisms, all the biotic components of the earth, we can say. And as we have also seen in our daily life also, like the birds, the small creatures which were going to be present in some of the previous years are now disappearing day by day. And the reason behind is, the main cause is radiations only, because the harmful radiations coming out from the technological applications may cause death to those small creatures. They are so that much harmful that the small creatures may not even survive in that, and it can be harmful for humans as well. This we will study in our next slide. So radiations, we can say radiation is the emission of energy as electromagnetic waves, which include visible radio waves, microwaves, or we can say ultraviolet lights, X-rays, mobile phones, computers, and other such technological applications. Now, moving forward, understanding and managing radiations are essential for addressing its benefit and risk in medicine industry and other field. So it is very important to understand what are radiations and how they can be controllable. Otherwise, its causes may be disastrous for the environment. Now, as the figure is shows out that there are three components: alpha, beta, and gamma. So the radiations are categorized into three components: alpha, beta, and gamma. In detail, this we will study further now, but an example where we can observe three different types of radiations and their penetration capabilities in various material, like for example from paper to aluminium and then lead. So these are ionizing material, which causes the electromagnetic wave and ultimately which results in the radiation pollution. I hope the meaning of radiation is clear. Let's take one more revision of radiation. Radiation is the emission or transmission of energy in the form of electromagnetic wave or subatomic particles. It can be ionizing and non-ionizing. Ionizing such as X-rays and gamma radiation, and non-ionizing is like radio waves, and which is visible light which we can see from our naked eyes, that is non-ionizing. But the ionizing is invisible lights which we cannot see, and these are found in X-rays and gamma radiations. Now, here we start. Introduction to radiation pollution. Now, what is radiation pollution is? Radiation pollution, we can say, is concerning environmental issue caused by the release of harmful uh, ionizing radiation in the atmosphere, soil, and water. So radiation pollution, what is radiation pollution? It is related to releasing of ionizing uh, radiations, harmful ionizing radiation into the atmosphere, into the soil, and into the water. This can occur through nuclear accidents, improper waste disposal, or natural disasters. So, what are the examples of the radiation? Radiations can be figured out, can occur through nuclear accidents, improper waste disposal, or natural disasters. Understanding the sources, impacts, and mitigation strategies for radiation pollution is crucial for protecting public health and the environment. One should understand its source, its impact, how it is affecting our environments, its mitigation strategies, so that we can protect our earth, so that we can protect the public health as well as the environment. So we can say, what is radioactive or radiation pollution? Radioactive pollution is defined as a form of physical nuclear pollution to living organisms and the environment arising from exposure to the release of ionizing radiation from radioactive elements. And what are those radioactive elements? Radioactive elements such as uranium, which is very harmful, which results in decaying of radioactive elements. So what is radiation pollution? Radiation pollution is concerning of releasing harmful ionizing radiation into the atmosphere. And what are those harmful ionizing radiation? It composes of various harmful chemicals such as uranium. So when these radiations are moving from are coming out from the some object, like for example mobile phone and televisions and computers and X-rays, so it causes the radiation pollution. So the example can be nuclear accidents. Nuclear accident, when someone tests the nuclear weapons, or we can say improper waste disposable, which means the heavy metals which we release directly into the atmosphere, directly into the land, then it causes a disastrous impact. The heavy material which comprises of heavy chemicals, the chemicals goes on releasing from them, and it causes a numerous of negative effect, or we can say through natural disasters also radiation pollution occurs. So one should understand the impact, positive or negative impact. There cannot be a positive impact from any pollution. So one should understand the impact, the sources, and try to control those sources so that pollution arising out of the radiation should be controllable. And also the strategies for radiation pollution is crucial for protecting public health and the environment. So the health of the nations, the health of the individual from the for the humans should be protect, and the environment should also protect, because the pollution which are coming out from the radiation may cause disastrous diseases to the human as well, like for example mouth cancer, dizziness, anxiety, hair loss. So these are the negative impact of the radiation pollution. Let's revise one more time. Radiation pollution. Ionizing radiation enters into the atmosphere, soil, and water is the radiation pollution. Ionizing radiation. Radiations can be of two forms. We have studied in our previous slide that radiation can be ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. The non-ionizing radiations are less disastrous, while non-ionizing radiations are more disastrous. Non-ionizing radiations enters directly into the skin of the individual and causes many harmful diseases like skin diseases and hair loss and mouth cancer, etc. So this is the introduction to our radiation pollution. Now, these are the sources of radiation, or we can say nuclear pollution. Do not get confused by its name. Radiation pollution and nuclear pollution both means the same thing. Radiation pollution is also known as nuclear pollution. So, nuclear pollution is divided into two parts. The sources where the nuclear pollution or radiation pollution arises are of two parts, divided into two parts: natural source and man-made source. So what is natural source? Natural source where there is no contribution of man, it occurs naturally. So natural source comprises earth is constantly exposed to x-rays and ultraviolet radiations. So the earth is exposing x-rays as well as the sun is exposing ultraviolet radiation. So ultraviolet rays. So these are natural sources where it comes naturally from the environment. So earth, how earth is responsible for creating radiation pollution when it exposed to x-rays, and the ultraviolet rays which are coming out of the sun is also a part of radiation pollution. So this is the natural source of radiation, or we can say nuclear pollution. Now second is man-made source. Man-made source like nuclear power plant, nuclear explosion, medical use, radiation from other source like phone, microwave, etc. So these are the man-made sources, like for example nuclear power plants which are creating nuclear energies are responsible for nuclear pollution. Nuclear explosion, when we are doing any when we are producing or testing any nuclear weapons, and the explosion coming out from that weapon is nuclear one, so that nuclear explosion creates a radiation pollution, as it consists of harmful chemicals, heavy metals. Next is medical use. How medical use can cause a nuclear pollution or radiation pollution, like for example ultrasound waves, x-rays. So these when the rays coming out of these things, they also are responsible for nuclear pollution. The rays coming out from the nuclear, or uh, we can say radiation pollution through the medical means, is also a part of nuclear pollution. Radiation from other source like phone, microwave, etc. Even our phone, mobile phone, is also responsible for nuclear pollution. There are some harmful radiations which came out from mobile phones, computers, laptops, and all those technological appliances like microwave, etc. So nowadays, as we have seen that we are much dependable on technology, and technology are making our many things convenient, easier, and which lead us our dependency more and more on the technology. But there are some consequences also for depending on the technologies. These technologies are making a man, a human, uh, also suffers some negative consequences. Like, if we are depending more on the technology, then we are surrounded with the technologies, and those technology appliances are creating more radiation pollution. So one should avoid them, try to avoid them if it is possible, and otherwise take some steps, some controllable measures, so that one cannot suffer from these radiations. Otherwise, the impact causing out from the radiations may be very disastrous, may be very harmful for the environment, or we can say for the human beings and all those living organisms. So these are the sources of nuclear pollution or radiation pollution. Sources of nuclear pollutions are divided into two parts: natural source and man-made source. Natural source are all those source which comes naturally from the earth, from the environment, which are not easily controllable in nature. Like for example, when the earth is exposed X-rays and ultraviolet rays coming out from the sun. So these are the natural example of the nuclear pollution. While on the other hand, man-made sources are like nuclear power plants, nuclear explosion, medical use, radiation from other sources like mobile phone, laptop, computer, microwaves, etc. Even nowadays, we have seen that many of us are depending on earbuds. Earbuds, this is very small device which is very convenient to use, but the harmful consequences may not be noticeable, but its consequences may be seen after few years on us. So we should try to avoid them when we are not using. When there is no use, then try not to use them, not to put all the time into our ear. Otherwise, the consequences may be very harmful for the human, as their eardrum may got affected, because radiations are continuously coming out from all those technological appliances. And if we are that much close to that technological appliances, then it may cause many health issues. So one should try to avoid if it is possible. Otherwise, take some substitute application appliances, so that there may be distance between all those things and their negative effect can be compromised. Now moving forward to the next slide. Now this is a effect of nuclear pollution. Effect of nuclear pollution is also divided into two parts: somatic effect and genetic effect. Now let us understand what is somatic effect. Somatic effect, let's take example first, like bones, intestinal tissues, and other tissues are extremely radiation sensitive. Radiation can shorten lifespan by causing cracked skin cancer, early aging, weakened immune systems, cardiovascular illness, etc. Now, what are genetic effect? Genetic effect: radiations from both artificial and natural sources can take a person's DNA and result in genetic abnormalities. Changes in DNA are the primary cause of these consequences and may increase the number of babies born with effects. So genetic effects, when the effects are seen in between the generations, when the DNA of one affected person is being transferred to another person, then that another person will also affected by and is also being affected due to the genes. But the somatic effects are whose effects are being directly observed on a human. Like for example, when it is suffering from nuclear pollution or radiation pollution, and suffering from the disease such as early aging, skin cancer, cardiovascular illness, etc. That is somatic effect. Let's study one more time that effects of nuclear pollution and radiation pollution will categorized into two parts: somatic effect and genetic effect. Somatic effect refers to all those effects whose effects has been seen on a human directly. There is no other means, like they are not transferring from one person to another, but the person who is between all those technological appliances and who himself is responsible for that is somatic effect. Like for example, if a person is in regular touch with the earbuds, we can say, and his that earbuds it did not plug it out from its ears, so the effects of earbuds of using continuously is being seen on a person, like when their eardrum got affected, when their hearing capacity had been gone affected. Or we can say when we are permanently residing in sun, and due to the ultraviolet rays coming out from the sun causes us skin cancer, when the rays enters into our skin tissues and affects our skin, that is a somatic effect. Or we can say, like if we are working in some mining company and the mining appliances which we uses for the mining ores, so in that case also the employee who are working in these kind of firms may got affected through the radiations. The radiations coming out from the towers, as you have seen in this picture also, the tower, radiations which are coming out from the tower are also very harmful. So the effects which have been seen directly on the human, the ultimately human got affected directly from those radiations is the somatic effect. And these and the diseases which are which came out from somatic effect can be skin cancer, mouth cancer, early aging, and our intestine got affected, and our bones got affected, and heart related disorders. So these can be an example of somatic effect. Now next is genetic effect. Now genetic, as the name suggests, which transfers through the genes. For example, when one person is suffering from nuclear pollution and its DNA got transferred to another person, its genes going to transfer to another person, so another person will also get affected, and which may leads to the newly born babies with the defects. So this is the genetic effect. I hope this is clear. Effects of nuclear pollution, somatic effect and genetic effect. Somatic effect are all those effects whose effect has been seen on a human body, but genetic effects are all those effects whose effect is whose when one person genes or DNA is being transferred to another person. Now, these are the types of radiations and their sources. So types of radiation is categorized into four parts. If we broadly classify these type of radiation and their sources, it is of three parts: alpha, beta and gamma. As this picture is also showing us these three parts, and the diagram also, that alpha, beta and gamma. So these are the types of radiations. Now alpha radiation. What is alpha radiation? It's a first stage radiation, which means emitted by radioactive elements like uranium and radon, can be blocked by thin layer of material. So when they are easily blocked by thin layer of material, that is alpha radiation. Stage 1 radiation we can also so we can also see we can also say. So alpha radiation emitted by radioactive elements like uranium and radon is consist of elements like uranium and radon. which can be blocked, which can be restricted by the thin layer of material. So alpha radiation, we can say, or all those radioactive elements which consist of two types of elements like uranium and radon, which can be blocked by thin layer of material. Now, second one is beta radiation, produced by nuclear fission, can penetrate deeper but is still relatively easy to shield. So, beta radiations produced by nuclear fission and can penetrate deeper but is still relatively easy to shield. So alpha beta radiations are least dangerous, and beta radiations are much dangerous than alpha radiation. So how they are producing, they are producing by nuclear fission, and they can penetrate deeper, which means the material, the thin material we are using in ultra alpha radiations now become more difficult to block them through thin layer of material, and it requires more shield as compared to alpha radiation. So what's the difference between alpha radiation and beta radiation? Alpha radiation comprises of the radioactive elements which are of two type, that is uranium and radon, and they can be blocked by thin layer of material. While beta radiations are produced by nuclear fission, and they can penetrate deeper, and it's required not a thin material but a proper shield to block those radiations. Now, next is gamma radiation. Gamma. Gamma radiation means high energy electromagnetic radiation that can travel long distance and require thick shielding to block. So gamma radiations are more dangerous than alpha and beta. The electromagnetic radiations coming out from this are very highly energy comprised, and they can travel a long distance, they can cover a long distance, which means they can affect the environment to some long distance and requires a very thick shield to block. Next is neutron radiation. Neutron radiation generated in nuclear reactors and weapons and can induce radioactivity in exposed material. So neutron radiations are all those radiation which are generated through nuclear reactors and weapons and can reduce radioactivity in exposing the material. Now, let's take a quick revision of types of radiations and their sources. So, first one is alpha, second is beta, and third one is gamma, and fourth is neutron. So, as they are increasingly, as the order is being increased, their harmful impact is also increasing. The alpha radiations are less harmful than beta radiation, and beta radiation is less harmful than gamma radiation, and gamma radiations are more harmful than these two, alpha and beta radiation. Alpha radiation comprises of the elements which are known as which are like uranium and radon, and they can easily be blocked by a thin layer of material. While the beta radiations, they are produced by nuclear fissions and they are deeper, so the layer required to block them is little bit more thinner than alpha radiations. It require a shield to protect to block these radiation. Next is gamma radiation. Gamma radiations are highly energy electromagnetic magnetic radiations which require a thick shield to used for blocking these radiation. And neutron radiation comprises of the nuclear reactors and weapons. So these are the types of radiation and their sources. Now, this is the health impact of radiation exposure. Short-term effects, long-term effects, and vulnerable populations effect. Short-term effects which are which can be observed easily, and the effect can be short term and diagnosis short form, and they can be treated easily. Long term effect, whose effect on the human body is of long term, and the treatment we require for this may take number of years. And the vulnerable one is the disastrous impact of the radiation pollution which has been observed on the human body and which take number of years, even generations, to get recover. So short-term effects can be observed like acute radiation sickness, including nausea, hair loss, organ damage, and occur with high immediate exposure. So short-term effects comprises of the sickness. It comprises of sickness like nausea, hair loss, organ damage. Like for example, when a person is in continuous linked with these radiations, then the effects which have been seen are of short term, like which are easily identifiable, like when we are working with those appliances which from which radiations are coming out, so their effects can be seen easily, like acute radiation sickness, which includes nausea, hair loss, and organ damage. Next is long-term effects. So when the human body get affected for a long time, for a long number of years, so that is long-term effects, which increases the risk of cancer, genetic mutations, and reproductive issues can arise from chronic low-level exposure. Next is vulnerable. Vulnerable exposure is children, pregnant women, and the elderly are at greater risk of harm from radiation exposure. So the health impacts of radiation exposure is being divided into three categories. First one is short term, second is long term, and third one is vulnerable. So short term effects which are easily identifiable and can be treated and can be and one can recover from them, but the long term effects which take number of years to get recover, and the effect which has been seen on the human body is disastrous, like causing of cancer, genetic mutation, reproductive issues, etc. These are the example of long term effects which require more number of years to get recovered from. Next is vulnerable. Vulnerable which take ages, which take generations to get recover, like for example children's, pregnant women. The pregnant woman carrying a baby, that baby can all, if a woman is suffering from radiation pollution, that baby, that disease, that radiations may transfer to that baby also, and then the result may be that may be seen when the baby is being born. So at the elderly age at greater risk of harm from radiation exposure. So these are the effects of radiation exposure: short-term effect, long-term effect, and vulnerable population. Now, environmental effects of radiation pollution. That how does radiation pollution, how does that electromagnetic rays coming out from the electronical appliances may affect the environments and all those biotic components who are the parts of that environment may got affected. So first one, so that effects is being categorized into three parts. First is contamination, second is ecosystem disruptions, and third is bioaccumulation. Contamination. Contamination comprises radioactive material can contaminate soil, water, and even air by persisting in the environment for decades. Look, the heavy metals, all those electronic or technological appliances which we threw directly on the ground, on the which we threw directly into the environment, the chemicals, the gases, the electromagnetic waves that are coming from these appliances are very disastrous, and it may result in contaminating the soil, water, or even air for the decades, for the number of years, but their impact can be seen for the number of years. So before contaminating the air, water and soil, one should understand that their effects, their impacts may be very severe, and the consequences can be seen for the number of years. So before releasing all these electronical appliances or these technological appliances directly into the environment, one should treat them, one should recycle them, one should reuse them, or one should destroy them completely. But do not throw them directly into the environment, otherwise it may result in contaminating of soil, water and air, and which take number of years, number of decades to be get recovered. Second is ecosystem disruption. Radiation exposure can damage or kill plant and animals, altering food webs and habitats. Now, ecosystem. Ecosystem may got disastrously affected because of radiation pollution. As we have also observed, many of us have been also seen that there were birds earlier times. We have seen many of the birds, but now they have been disappearing, they have been endangered. By the reason behind is can be a radiation pollution also. The birds, the small creatures which are not easily, the birds, the butterflies, the small creatures which we were seen in earlier times are now being endangered, now being disrupted, now being lost because of the radiations coming out from the towers, from the technological advancement, from the electronical appliances. So the ecosystem is also being affected, is also being disturbed by the radiation pollution. How? The technological advancement, because of technological advancement, the we are more relying on our technological appliances, which may leads to the more entering of radioactive waves into the environment, and which may leads to the killing of plant as well as animals. As we have also seen in earlier times that many of the species which are around us, like small butterflies, small birds, crows, etc., they are being nowadays they have been not they have not been seen by us, and they have been disappearing slowly and endangering and diminishing because of the radiation pollution. The pollution causing to them is that much harmful, which may lead to their death also. So when the radiation pollution is being entered into the food chain and the food web, they can cause number of killing to the plants as well as to the animals, as they may suffer from numerous number of diseases, and they may lead to their killing, or we can say they die because of radiation pollution. Now, bioaccumulation. What is bioaccumulation? When the radioactive isotopes can accumulate in the tissue of living organisms, magnifying through the food chain. So the radioactive waves, the radioactive isotopes, when they entered into the tissue of living organism, then they may affect the food chain. Because and as we are already aware that the food chain, in food chains, the dependency of living organism on the another party. So once it is consuming by any living organism, it get automatically transferred to another organism. So accumulation is being done through the food chain. The radioactive isotopes or radioactive waves is being transferred through food chain. So this is the effect which has been seen on the environment because of the contamination of air, water and solution. The ecosystem may get fully disturbed, and which may leads to killing of plant as well as to the animals. Now, this is the regulatory framework and standards. Regulatory framework and standard which are being formulated so that the pollution occurring through radiations may be controlled, and the the environment may not get easily affected. So what is there are many regulations and standards which are being formed. So the international regulation, which is known as IAEA, stands for International Atomic Energy Agency, sets global standard for radiation production and nuclear safety. So international regulation, under international regulations, there is an agency set up by the government which sets the global standards, global rules, global regulations for protecting the radiation and doing the nuclear safety. Like IAEA stands for International Atomic Energy Agency. International Atomic Energy Agency, which is being set up so that there should be some rules, there should be some global standards which may lead to the production of radiations and nuclear safety. They are not being directly released into the environment, which may lead to unaffected of plants, animals, as well as human beings. Next is national legislation. So on national level, what major steps has been taken? So many countries have their own laws and regulations governing the use of nuclear technology and management of radioactive waste. So in terms of nations, we talk about that every nation has implemented, every nation has set some standards, laws, rules, policies, regulations which are being governed so that the use of nuclear technology and management, and there should be a management of radioactive waste. So as we already know that the radioactive waste is very harmful. If we release those waste, if we release radioactive comprises appliances directly into the environment, it may cause a disastrous impact. So there should be a proper management of radioactive waste. Either it should be recycled or the use should be reduced, or otherwise there should be a proper management of radioactive waste material. And also the use of nuclear technology. One should know that what are the harmful consequences of using nuclear technology, and it should be fairly treated first before releasing into the environment. One should know that the nuclear technology, the nuclear weapons, the nuclear energy which we are which is coming out from the technology should be treated by planting more and more trees, and the plants has the capacity to consume that, but it should not be uh, testing should not be done nearby the residential area. So the national level, at national level we can say the countries, many countries, they have set up their own laws and regulations which which is seeking towards the, which is looking after the nuclear technology, and there should be a management of radioactive waste. Next is dose limit. Regulatory bodies establish maximum allowable radiation doses for worker, the public, and the environment. So there is some limits set up by the regulatory bodies, and those limits should not be crossed by the worker, by the public, and the environment, so that the environment may be safe. So regulatory body establish maximum allowable radiation doses, maximum limits. So one should not easily cross those limits, and it should be followed properly by the worker, by the public, so that the environment may be safe. Next is environmental monitoring. So regular monitoring of air, water, and soil is required to ensure compliance with radiation protection standards. So there should be a regular monitoring of air, water, and soil, which means that there should be we should check through machines that they are not being contaminated. How much the up to which level they have been contaminated, and what are the preventive measures one can take. One government should set up all those things so that there should be a proper monitoring of air, water, and soil through the to which require compliance with radiation protection and standards. So this is the regulatory framework and standard which comprises of international regulation, national legislation, dose limit, and environmental monitoring. International regulation consists of an agency whose name is IAEA. is a short form, and when we expand it, it means the International Atomic Energy Agency, who is working worldwide and setting a global standard for radiation protection and nuclear safety. Next is national legislation. National legislation at national level, many countries they have taken many steps regarding the radiation pollution. They have formulated the laws, regulations, rules, policies, so that they can check out the use of nuclear technology and its consequences, and the radioactive waste which humans are creating in an environment. There should be a proper management, there should be a proper disposal of all these radioactive waste. Next is dose limit, that one should set a dose limit, which means the regulatory bodies which are checking the which are formulated for the sake of controlling the pollution. They have been established a maximum allowable radiation doses for the working for the public and the environment. Now, environmental monitoring. One should also check the air, water, and soil nearby to them. Environmental monitoring can be done by monitoring the environment, by monitoring the air, water, and soil from time to time, and ensure that there is a compliance with the radiation protection standards. So this is a regulatory framework and standard. This can also be studied through this diagram also, where there is a technical regulatory authorities. They can be technical, they can be governmental, and it comprises of developing rules and regulation, provide practical guidance and advise, design and develop operational criteria, supervise and control implementation. And after combining all those things, then long-term decision is being taken with clear societal understanding and agreement. Before moving forward, one thing I want to discuss is that solution to any problem is the awareness. So one should spread more and more awareness regarding any uh, consequences which are coming out from the radiation pollution. If we are aware of the facts that the radiations, that the pollution occurring due to these radiations are that much disastrous, then it is easy to control. But if we are not aware of the facts that the consequences, the disastrous impact which has been seen over the generations are that much disastrous, then it's not easy to control. So education, awareness should be there regarding the pollution. Then only our Mother Earth can be safer, and our generation can be safer. Now, this is the mitigation strategies of radiation. Mitigation strategies for radiation: contaminator cleanup, monitoring, and education. Contamination: proper shortage and disposal of radioactive waste to prevent environmental leak. So there should be a proper management of the radioactive waste. All those materials which are producing the radioactive waste, which are producing the highly energy electromagnetic waves, so there should be a proper disposal of all those materials, and those materials are being not directly released into the environment, otherwise their causes may be very negative. As we already know, the technology which we are using, which we are relying, it has, if it has some positive effect, it more than that it has some negative impact which have not been observed now, but the negative impact can be observed after number of years, after number of time. So one should understand that there is a if if anything, if convenient, if today we are feeling any conveniency, then it can have some negative impact in future also. So if we are using, if we are relying on the technology, if we are using some radioactive materials, radioactive objects, so it's our responsibility to not to release directly into the environment, but there should be a proper management. There should be, one should reduce the use of radioactive waste, or one should recycle it, but it should not release directly into the environment, as it comprises of the heavy metals such as uranium, arsenic, lead, which may leads to heavy costs to the natural resources. Also, if we are disposing it directly into the soil, then the fertility of the land may get compromised, or when it or it may really, it may if the intake of such substances is done by any of the animal or bird, then it may cause a severe negative impact to them, which may lead to death also. So there should be a proper management of radioactive waste before releasing into the environment. Cleanup, decontamination and remediations of areas affected by radiation spills or leaks. So there should be a proper cleanup for the radioactive waste, which may also cause, which may also arises due to radiation spills or leaks. So there should be a proper cleanup, there should be a proper management, there should be a proper system of cleaning all those things. If human himself take the responsibility of using all those electromagnetic waves appliances, or we can say radioactive materials, and take the responsibility of recycling it, or before disposing it, take the responsibility, not releasing it into the environment directly, then there's no need of all these efforts which have been doing, which are being done by the government. So one should be that much aware, that much educated, that the consequences which are arising due to radiation pollutions are that much negative, then it may lead to death also. Next, monitoring, as we have already discussed, that it's a responsibility of an individual, of the government, to timely monitor the air, water, and soil, continuous surveillance of radiation level and environmental impacts. One should surveillance the radiation levels, that radiation level, how much it is increasing or decreasing or whatever whatsoever. So there should be proper monitoring for that, and the in environmental impacts, and what are the disastrous impact, negative impact it is causing on the environment. So there should be a proper monitoring of that. Next is education, which is must. If we are aware, if we are educated, if we know that the consequences of the radiation pollution is that much negative, is that much harmful, that much disastrous, then we will be aware and make other aware also. But if we are uh, educated also, and instead of that we are not focusing on the negative consequences, then we are not a good educated person, we are not a responsible citizen of the society. So we should use our education in a right directions, and we should make the other people also aware that the negative consequences of radiation pollution are very harmful, and it may cause numerous disasters if, impact to the living organisms and the environment, or we can say for the generations also. So there should be a proper education, there should be a proper monitoring, there should be a proper cleanup, and contamination of air, water, soil should be diminished. So these are the mitigation strategies for radiation pollution: contamination, cleanup, monitoring, and education. Now, these are also some of the controllable measures of nuclear pollution or radiation pollution. Some of them we have already discussed, that we should make a proper management for disposing of the radioactive waste, and also the education which we have already have, we should use that education in the right directions, or we should make aware other people also regarding this. but some of the controllable measures are also there. So let's read it one by one. First one is planting dense trees surrounding atomic power station can lower the amount of radiation they emit. Second is, it is important to make sure radioactive waste is managed properly to guard against the health risk associated with radiation. Nuclear power facilities should be equipped with improved equipment and appropriate waste disposal techniques. So, the major solution to any pollution is planting more and more of trees, as we have already discussed in another pollution also, whether it is air pollution, water pollution, soil pollution, plastic pollution. All these pollution can be controllable if we plant more and more of the trees. So planting trees, planting dense trees surrounding atomic power station can lower the amount of radiation they emit. So as we have already discussed, that atomic power station, they consist of highly radioactive waves, they consist of electromagnetic waves, they consist of ionizing waves. So these can be controlled when we plant more and more trees around them, so the radiations coming out of them may consumed by those plants, and their emissions can be reduced, their emission can be limited into the environment before releasing the radiation directly into the environment. They can cause a disastrous impact. As we have already discussed that there are three major type of radiation: alpha, beta and gamma. So the range of alpha radiation is short, so these are not much highly emitted into the environment, and as compared to alpha, beta radiations are much dangerous and the emissions can be up to certain distance, but the gamma radiations are the most harmful radiations and their emissions can be seen over a number of distances. So before spreading uh, this radiation into the environment by setting up of atomic power stations, one should plant more and more trees around it so that the emissions can be controlled. So planting trees is the solution of controlling any kind of any kind of pollution, whether it is air, water, soil, and it is also helpful in controlling the nuclear pollution. Second, it's important to make sure radioactive waste is managed properly. It is very important to ensure that the waste releasing by the human into directly into the environment should be treated properly. There should be a proper management, whether they can recycle those waste, whether they can reduce it, or whether it has some proper drainage system with proper disposal system, so that the chemical release from all those metals should not destroy the environment, should not affect the environment, should not affect the living organism, or we can say biotic components of the environment. So there should be a proper management of radioactive waste such as, for example, if we are using a mobile phone, if we are using a television, if we are using a laptop, so somehow that electronic appliances may got damaged. So instead of throwing it directly into the environment, one should treat it. There should be a proper management. One should not just throw it away, because the chemical releasing from all those heavy metals are very dangerous. So one should treat them properly. There should be a proper management before disposing of directly into the environment. For example, they are non-biodegradable waste. They do not get decomposed easily. So once they are released by the human into the environment, it took number of years, it took several years to get disposed of. So there should be a proper management. Otherwise, the radioactive rays coming out from these materials may not stop, and which may leads to the killing of plants and small creatures, and which may leads to disastrous diseases which may enter into the human body and cause the health loss. So to guard against the health risk associated with radiation, nuclear power facilities should be equipped with improved equipment and appropriate waste disposable techniques. So there should be appropriate waste disposal techniques. For example, atomic power plants or nuclear power facilities, they have been set up, but their consequences may be negative. So one should have the one who is opening all these facilities, who are providing all these facilities, they should also know how those facilities, if they creates a negative effect to the environment, how these facilities can be controllable. So there should be a proper management for each and every appliances which have been provided into the environment. Next, whenever feasible, diagnostic procedure involving X-ray examination should be avoided. To lessen the effect of exposure, technicians and workers involved in X-ray procedure should frequently wear lead rubber aprons and shields. So uh, if we are working, for suppose if we are working any atomic power stations, or where the mining work of mining ores is being doing on, or the we have several technicians who are involved in the work of X-rays. So the harmful rays coming out from all these things are that much disastrous that it may affect that person in a negative way. There he may suffer from many diseases. So one should protect themselves by wearing lead rubber aprons and shields. So before entering all these things, before getting in touch with all these things, so it's a responsibility of the individual to protect himself by wearing the lead rubber aprons and shields. Next, measures like choosing a location for nuclear plants, their design, building, and operation, as well as their short and long term consequences, should be carefully taken into account in order to manage the radiation. So, the location where we are setting up all those plants which may create a radioactive waste, for example, nuclear plants, their design, building, and operation, and the consequences, one must know them clearly, and they should ensure that it should be away from residential area, so that it is easy to manage the radiation before releasing directly into the environment. So it's a responsibility, it's a responsibility of the individual, of those people who are working, who are making all these things possible, like nuclear power plants, atomic power station, etc., that their design, building, and operation should be formulated in a proper way, and their consequences, whether it is short term and long term consequences, one should know them, and they should be treated in a good way before releasing into the environment. So it's a responsibility for the individual to measure and choose a location wisely, so that it may emit less radioactive waves, and the consumptions of radioactive waves may diminish. So these are the control measure of nuclear pollution. First one is planting more and more trees, as plants has the capacity to consume the pollutions and to consume the radiations. So before releasing radiation, they emit themselves. So they emit, and it may not get spread directly into the environment. So one should plant more and more trees to control the radiation pollution or nuclear pollution. Next is there should be a proper the radioactive waste management should be there. Radioactive waste should be treated properly before releasing directly into the environment. Next is the workers, the people who are indirectly involved in such radioactive waves, like the people technicians who are involved in X-rays, who are working in some power stations, who are involved in the work of making technological appliances. So they themselves have the responsibility to protect themselves by wearing lead rubber aprons and shields. And also the the people who are who have been set up the power plants, those from where the radioactive rays are coming out, they should choose the location wisely, and the design, building and operation, and also they should know the short term and long term consequences of setting up all those plants who are releasing the radioactive waste, and they should be carefully taken into account to manage the radiation. So these are the controllable measures. Once we follow all these measures, then up to certain extent we can control the radiation pollution. This is a case study related to radiation pollution. These are some real incidents which has been happened into the world and which causes a severe negative impact to the environment. So this is a crux. Just no, we will not study them in that much detail. Just we will take a overview of these case studies. So first one is Chernobyl disaster. So what happened in Chernobyl? In 1986 accident at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine led to widespread radioactive contamination and long-term environment and health impact. So an accident took place in 1986 where at Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which is situated in Ukraine. So there is a widespread radioactive contamination and long-term environment and health impacts. So there its impacts can be seen over a number of years. So there is a plant, there is a setup in the Ukraine which has been where the radioactive appliances is being produced and it got disrupted, and after that the radioactive contaminations leads to the contamination into the air, water and soil, which may leads to a severe negative impact to the environment as well as to the human beings, and their health impacts can be seen for several number of years also. So how disastrous can be a radiation pollution. Next is Fukushima Daiichi accident. So Fukushima Daiichi accident, the 2011 nuclear accident in Japan, triggered by a tsunami, highlighted the need for robust safety measures and emergency response planning. So where this happened? It happened in 2011 in Japan, which is triggered by the society and highlighted the need for the reverse safety measures and emergency response planning. So its negative effect is also being observed, and it is that much disastrous that the emergency response planning has been done and robust safety measures is being adopted. Next is radiation cleanup efforts. Extensive decontamination and remediation work is ongoing in affected areas with lessons learned for improving future radiation incident management. So there should be a proper incident proper radiation management, as we have already seen that its effect are very disastrous, very harmful. If a country which is suffering more of these disaster, their severe impact has been seen for several number of years, like in Chernobyl and Fukushima Daiichi, Japan. These countries has been affected for number of years due to this radiation pollution. So there should be a proper management for radiation, for radioactive waves, and one should try to avoid if it is possible. Otherwise, take all those measures to protect ourselves from the radiation pollution. So these are the case studies. Now, conclusion. Here come our conclusion. This is a summary slide. Conclusion and key takeaways. Ongoing threat. Radiation pollution remains a significant global change with the potential for catastrophic environment and health consequences. Comprehensive approach addressing radiation pollution requires a multifaceted strategy, including regulation, mitigation, monitoring, and public health. Continuous improvement, learning from past incidents and implementing best practices can help reduce the risk and impact of radiation pollution. So it's an ongoing threat, which means it's a threat still now, as we have not, there is no one-way solution of controlling it. There are several solutions that one should follow all these things so that we can avoid it. Like radiation pollution remains it's a still a global challenge which needs to be treated, otherwise their consequences on the health can be very disastrous. It's a comprehensive approach, and there is a continuous improvement which an individual, a government is taking by setting up an agencies, by setting up standards, rules, norms, regulations. So one should not disobey them, one should follow them strictly, because the consequences may be that much disaster, then it may lead many harmful diseases to the human and may also kill the plant as well as animals. So the major solution of all these pollution we can say are the awareness. If we are aware of the fact that these pollution are that much disastrous to a human body, that much disastrous to living organism, biotic components, then there may be a control on all these pollution. Otherwise, it is very difficult to control these pollutions, and we will suffer, our future will suffer, our generation will suffer, and our mother earth will also get suffered. So one should try to avoid all these appliances, all these materials which consist of radiations, or one should recycle it, or one should know the consequences of all these things so that they may be controlled. And it is very important because our generations may got affected. Okay, that's all for this class. Thank you so much, and see you in next class. Have a great day.